Welcome to This Week in Racing. I'm David Land. We've got a very NASCAR-centric episode today. Lots of NASCAR topics to discuss, in part because of the discussion I had last night with Adam Stern of the SBJ. If you've paid attention to this channel, this show specifically, for any extended period of time, you will have heard Adam Stern's name. And as far as I'm concerned, he's one of the best motorsports reporters in the business, incredibly knowledgeable, and as it turns out, a great interview. We had a fantastic hour and a half long discussion on the business side of racing, specifically NASCAR, IndyCar, and F1. I think it was a fascinating talk, and I highly suggest if you have any interest in the business side of racing that you listen to that, because I thought it was really fantastic. Adam was very generous with not only his time, but also his knowledge. Remember, a journalist a lot of times will want to give information or things that they have heard on their own platform. So anytime somebody comes on, does an interview, and is very generous with that information, it is definitely generous. So I appreciate that for Adam, and I really want you guys to not only check out that interview, but also check him out on social media if you haven't done so already. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about some of the topics we talked about in that stream. We're going to be talking about NASCAR and the lack of a title sponsor starting next year for them, what that means going forward. And speaking of going forward, in terms of NASCAR, what might happen with the Nashville Fairgrounds. And also, we've got some Indy Lights news. That's a bit of an interesting point, but you will see in just a second that it's pretty relevant, and a lot of us kind of got fooled into getting way more hype for this announcement than we probably should have. So some cryptic tweets went out fairly late in the day yesterday, Thursday, that Andretti would be making an Indianapolis driver announcement. Many of us jumped to the conclusion that it was for the Indianapolis 500. What we didn't realize was that it was not for the Indy 500. It wasn't even for an IndyCar race. It was for the Firestone, or what used to be the Firestone Freedom 100. It is now just the Freedom 100. Come on, David, get that right. But Jarett Andretti, the son of John Andretti, will take over a third Andretti Autosport car for the Freedom 100. Now, of course, we know that those cars are very potent. A lot of the times, they are the cars that end up in victory lane. And Jarett himself is a USAC driver. He has run the sprints and the midgets over on the dirt and the pavement. And this season, he's actually transitioned, of all things, to what used to be the Pirelli World Challenge. I think it's now called the SRO Cup or something like that. But yes, another Andretti is looking to climb the ladder up into Indy cars. Certainly this will be a dress rehearsal, both a dress rehearsal and a trial by fire for Jarett Andretti, because this not only will be his first major Formula Car oval race, but it'll be on a super speedway at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That being said, I think we all are going to be wishing him luck. And NASCAR's flirtation with the Nashville area continues to gain steam, as this render, which was released very recently, shows what a Nashville Fairgrounds raceway would look like if it got the necessary love and attention to bring it up to NASCAR Cup Series specifications. What could happen? What is the future for Nashville? Of course, we also know that the NASCAR banquet has moved to Nashville from Las Vegas, but the 2021 schedule is kind of the thing that everybody is talking about in NASCAR. It's one of the major topics, and it's something that we're probably going to be talking quite a bit about into the future. So what do we know about Nashville? Well, we know there's an interest on both sides to possibly make this happen. We also know that there are some zoning regulations that would need to be looked at. We'd also need to be looking at, because it's not a track that's owned by a traditionally NASCAR-oriented company. I think it's publicly owned, though SMI has made some concessions to try to make a race at Nashville happen. We'll have to see how it all goes, because and it's kind of weird how this is the track. I mean, there's so many kind of bigger tracks that we could be talking about that don't have a cup date right now, that I think in kind of my brain would be ahead of it, like Iowa or you go into the road course thing like Road America or Elkhart Lake or even Circuit of the Americas, stuff like that. Even think about this, Gateway. I mean, Gateway seems like it would be a perfect track to host a Cup race. Maybe it's a little too close to Chicagoland for NASCAR. I don't know. Maybe it's too close to Indianapolis for NASCAR, considering what their spectator count has been at Indianapolis, and probably isn't going to get much better. Nashville itself, obviously, everybody's been clamoring for the short tracks, and here's the thing about the short track discussion, and also the fact that SMI is involved in the discussions here, is that we saw what happened at Bristol. It's no secret that it was a pretty depressing looking crowd, and there's already been questions of whether or not the spring race at Bristol will continue. I would, if I was a betting man right now, I'd say that Bristol probably only has one race by the time they get around to 2021. I think that's why we've been hearing a lot about SMI being involved with a potential race at the Nashville Fairgrounds. Obviously, fairly close to Tennessee or to Bristol. Obviously, they're both in Tennessee, but fairly close to Bristol. You could transition a spring. Now, I don't know what. I guess the weather would be the same or relatively the same as it would be in Bristol to Nashville. So I guess you could transition a spring Bristol race into a spring race at Nashville. But part of the discussion we've heard that didn't have to do with hotel rooms is we've heard a lot of people say that everybody wants short tracks, but the TV ratings and the attendance haven't backed that up. It's almost like, in a lot of ways, the IndyCar way of everybody saying, well, we want more ovals, and then nobody watches or shows up for the oval races. It's kind of that same thing, and it's so strange. I don't know how to explain any of it, to be honest with you. I would imagine that a brand new race for NASCAR, especially at a venue, I guess a brand new race in this era of NASCAR, because I believe they've held Grand National events before at the Nashville Fairgrounds, but a brand new race in this era at that track would definitely generate some excitement, at least early on. Whether or not that would be sustainable, we'll just have to wait and see. And it also, looking at that render that I showed earlier, how much are they going to invest in this thing? I don't know. How much are they willing to invest, and how much of a return are they going to get there? Those are going to be questions that we're going to have to look into going forward. And again, I have a bit of a head scratcher right now as to why this race, and this race in particular, this track, is the front runner to be one of the new tracks for 2021. And finally, NASCAR will be without a title sponsor starting in 2020. But, it's not as bad as that may sound. Now, Monster Energy, which is the current title sponsor of the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, was willing to continue the agreement. Adam Stern reported that it was somewhere around $20 million per year. Monster was comfortable with that. They wanted to continue. But NASCAR themselves said thanks, but no thanks. You heard that right. NASCAR turned down $20 million for the title sponsorship. Now, where is it going to go from here? Well, the discussion I had with Adam Stern last night seems to indicate that NASCAR is moving to a model similar to what Formula One does. Now, you may know that the FIA Formula One World Championship does not have a title sponsor, and to my knowledge has never had a title sponsor. It's never been the Marlboro World Championship. It's always been the FIA Formula One World Championship. And how they monetize themselves, or how they integrate companies into their brand without necessarily selling naming rights, is that you see the race sponsorship. You see Heineken will buy 3 or 4 different races. So it'll be the Formula One Grand Prix, Heineken Grand Prix of Canada, or, whatever. You see all the signage at the racetracks, like, again, with Heineken, Santander, DHL, all those sponsors that you see show up at every single F1 racetrack, and some that you see only show up at 1 or 2. Those are all deals that are worked out with Formula One, and that's money that's going virtually right to Formula One's pocket in lieu of a title sponsor. This was, again, something that Adam Stern brought up last night in our discussion. There's a possibility that NASCAR could actually bring in more revenue, piecemealing out $1 million sponsorships between 3 or 4 different entities, rather than selling and pitching to one and not only hoping that they stick around for a while, but hope that you get all the money that you really want and or need. So I don't know if this is a calculated risk. I don't know if it's a wise risk for NASCAR to take. I definitely believe it's a risk. I'm not saying that there aren't companies out there that are willing to work with NASCAR or pay them money directly in some sort of a sponsorship capacity that isn't the traditional naming rights that we've seen with Winston and Nextel and Sprint and Monster Energy. I'm just saying that it is a lot more risky to first kind of put that out there that, well, we don't have a title sponsor anymore, and you have to kind of explain why you don't have a title sponsor anymore, and then you move on from that, and you're going to have to give the companies that you are now pitching on this somewhat of a lesser deal, you're going to have to provide them the value that's either equal to, or at least equal to what they feel like they're paying, in terms of what you're giving them. What kind of signage, how many races in terms of the title sponsorship do you give them? That's going to be something to really look for going forward. And kind of as we see NASCAR beginning to change their business model quite a bit, we're just going to hear more and more stuff like this. How's it all going to go? Hell if I know. I'm glad they're doing something, because I think it's pretty clear at this point that stagnation is the worst thing that NASCAR could do, because a lot of the things that they've stagnated on are the things that not only the fans complain the most about, but in a lot of ways, they're the things that seem to be most rejected by the people that NASCAR are trying to kind of sell their brand to. So we'll just have to see how it all goes. I wouldn't say I'm negative on it. I wouldn't say I'm positive on it. I'm kind of let's see where it goes. And surely when we start hearing some more announcements in terms of sponsorship, we'll be covering it on this show. So thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more motorsport content. This has been David Land on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next video. Be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below, and always leave a like on it, or a dislike if you don't like it. That's always a possibility. And at least if you leave a dislike, let me know why in the comments. That's always helpful.